Hello and welcome to this special broadcast on the occasion of Earth Day. When we look at our planet, there's so many different names that we have called it from. For one thing is common for all of us, no matter where we live in the world, this planet is our home. And yet, we see that our home today faces a challenge that it has never faced before. Why have we come to this point? Is a question that you might have. But when we have challenges, we also know that we have solutions to those challenges. And there are so many who have worked tirelessly to bring those solutions to us. Today, we bring you a special conversation with two of the leading lights of this world who have worked for the betterment of this world. We have a prominent environmentalist, Dr. Vandana Shiva with us, and we also have a spiritual leader who has guided millions on the path of making their lives better and thereby making this world a better place to live in. Brahma Kumaris, Sister Jayanti. I would like to welcome both Sister Jayanti and Dr. Vandana to the show.
Thank you.
Just to start with, on this Earth Day, there is so much happening. There are so many conversations happening around the globe. And I understand that today people are looking for many answers, and they might have questions for others, for themselves. In the similar fact, if you would want to face the people of the planet today, if they were looking up to you, what would be one or two questions that you would want to ask them? That these are the questions that you should think about, really, as the people of planet. First to Vandanaji.
Well, the first question I've asked myself repeatedly and invite everyone to ask is, what is our relationship with the earth? Is the earth a dead earth? Or is she a living earth, a mother earth? And our duty is to care. The second, especially in this time of a lockdown, where we're already being tested to simplify our lives, what is most essential to you? And third, what is it that you can give, no matter who you are?
Wonderful. I think that gives us food for thought about what we really should be asking ourselves. And you have given these beautiful questions. And I believe with time on our hands, we all are thinking, and some of us are certainly thinking about the solutions as well. Sister Jayanti, I would like you to ask questions that you might think that should also make us think about things in a better way. What would be those questions for the people?
It's very, very similar to what my dear Sister Vandana has already shared, but perhaps different words. And what I would say is, do people understand that human activity has actually had a huge impact on what's going on within the environment? Perhaps they've never thought about this before. It's time to dwell on this. And the second question would be, is there something that I can do to support positive change within the environment and climate? I'm sure there's something we can do. And the third would be, have you thought about the legacy that you're leaving for the future? I think that's important.
Wow. I believe with these questions that have come in, we all understand that there is so much to think about. And the reason why we have started this conversation on this note is because it is not just for us to find answers, but it is also for us to look for answers within, to go inside and ask the right kind of questions. Moving on, I would like to take the next question to Vandanaji. This year's Earth Day theme is Restore Our Earth. When we look at the planet, like you were saying, that do we just see it as a planet? Do we just see it as a dead planet? Or is there a connection that I have with the planet? When we talk about restoring, there is a common understanding that something was better off. That is the reason we need to add restore to it. We have to redo it. So how did we come to this point where we had to really think about restoring something? Everybody would agree that 50 years ago from now, the planet was in a better shape compared to where we are today. What happened? How did we come to this point? What went wrong?
Both my studies, my research, my activism have taught me that there have been 3 breaks at the global level in our relationship with the earth. And I don't use the word restore because it says restore, a store of raw materials. Oh, we are running out. Yeah. So we need to stock her up again. No, the earth is creative energy. She is potential. My PhD was on quantum theory. And the 2 lessons of quantum theory you can't escape is everything is connected, non-separability, and everything is potential. There aren't things in a store, but a generative potential. And what we have witnessed is a degeneration that set in first with colonialism that basically tried to erase the values and cultures of conservation and earth-centered cultures and economies. And then, to facilitate colonialism, was the fossil fuels, first coal and then oil, and all of the climate havoc, all of the species extinction, all of the deforestation is connected to a fossil fuel-driven industrialism, both in manufacture and in agriculture. And then the third big break was, we all became independent. We created laws, environment laws. Jayanti, Ben and I have been at many of the environmental summits. And yet, 30 years ago, these laws started to get deregulated through a process that is normally called globalization. And everyone thought, oh, we are all getting linked together. But it was a new break in our togetherness and a new commodification of life. And, in my mind is coming this giant container ship stuck in the Suez Canal. That we are now living in a system we've created where things are getting stuck. We make bigger and bigger containers and longer distance transport and more dependence on imports and exports, and the ship is getting stuck. So we have to move from degeneration to regeneration. We have to move from separation to oneness. And we have to move from hierarchies and inequalities to the recognition that we are all one humanity with equal duties, equal rights on one beautiful Mother Earth, who's not just our home, but our mother.
Very beautifully said when you connect not just looking at the planet as the planet, not as a resource, but as Mother Earth. And you very beautifully pointed out how different things have brought us to this point today. Indeed, it is modern times that we live in, and the modern times have brought into a modern problem as well. I would move to Sister Jayanti now for the next question. With what Vandana ji was saying, she said that this is not a dead planet. This is a relationship that we have when we say Mother Earth. When we say this whole word about restore our Earth, that is this year's theme, when we say our Earth, what does it really make ours? Because most of us look at it as our source of nourishment, of food, shelter. We call this planet our home. But what is that really makes it ours? How do we say that it belongs to me? How do we say it is our Earth? How does it really belong to me?
I'd like to continue with this analogy, this very beautiful image of Mother Earth. And that's the reality. We have one mother, and the whole of humanity is one family. And we've forgotten both that mother, but we've also forgotten our own connection with each other as one family. And when we think about Mother Earth and one family, then truly it is a oneness that Sister Vandana was talking about very beautifully earlier. But also I'd like to share another concept which is very true, and all the traditions have understood this, rather have talked about it, but haven't clearly understood it. And that is the concept that there is one creator, and the creation is not my property. It is not mine to rob and abuse and violate and aggress. I was given the fortune of being on this planet as a traveler. I was also given the responsibility to take care of this beautiful mother as a trustee. Some use the word steward, some use the word trustee, but I was given something very precious to care for and to be able to share with others also, that because Earth belongs to all of us in that awareness. And so my question is, have I been able to care for my mother? My mother sustained humanity through millennia, and today we've come to a point where we've taken everything out of her and we've destroyed so much. And so can I come back to that awareness of caring for my mother? Or in other words, can I also remember that I have a responsibility as a trustee, not to say that this is my property and I'm going to do something to claim more, and each one wants more than the next. And so we've divided everything up into little pieces and little bits. But in fact, it is one world, one earth, one mother, one family. And so I think when I shift this consciousness, not about owning something, this does not belong to me as such. It was given as a very, very precious gift, a beautiful pearl, a blue pearl in the ocean of the blackness of space. That's how the astronauts described this earlier on. The blue represented, of course, the water. And so today, what am I doing? Am I able to care and share? I think it's important to remember this.
Wow, when you say that we are stewards and we are the people who have this trusteeship, we also are the people who have this gift. That is our connection. That is how it really makes it ours, but not something to trample upon or to throw away or to think lightly and tread lightly about. But there is a responsibility that comes with the gift that we have. Vandanaji, coming back to you, when we talk about restoring, even though you said restore is not the right word, but since this is the theme this year, do we really think that it is possible to restore? Just to think about what has happened in the past 100, 150 years, we have lost a great deal of forest cover. We have lost a great amount of species. So there is a biodiversity loss. So much that every day we lose up to 150 species. How do you really think that in the state that we are in today, that we look about restoring, is it really possible to restore something? Do you not really think that we have gone beyond a point of no return where we cannot come back from? Do you not think so? It is too late?
If we follow on what Sister Jayanti has said and what I said earlier, and we are children of Mother Earth, and the Mother is living, the Mother Earth is living. It can never be too late for us to stop harming her. So the first thing is, it's never too late. Second, the main thing we have to do is become aware of the root causes of harm and stop it. And then the earth has her own potential to regenerate. So I use the word regenerate, not restore. And you're right, because the theme is restore. We have to talk about regeneration within this theme. But regenerate means the generative potential is the creative potential. Sister Jayanti put it so beautifully. There's one creator. And there's an amazingly diverse, interconnected creation in all kinds of expression. And that is biodiversity. And the different ways in which we relate to that richness of biodiversity shapes cultural diversity. my work has shown that every one of the crises, whether it's species extinction or climate change, is related to those problems of mastery that Sister Jayanti mentioned. This is mine as property. So there's ownership in terms of my mother. There's ownership in terms of my property. Now, my property tramples on the earth. My mother says, how can I take care of you? Give me instructions, turns to the earth. And then it turns to all the traditions that have allowed us to receive that instruction. For me, that is spirituality. To be able to live in the universe and on this earth, taking instructions from a higher order and a higher energy and a higher creative force, and then doing your bit. I know it's possible because, I wasn't supposed to be doing agriculture. Like I said, I studied quantum theory. But 1984, two very violent episodes forced me to understand what was going wrong with agriculture. In June, on the 4th, the army was sent to the Golden Temple because there was violence growing in Punjab. 30,000 people had been killed. I had done my MSc honors in particle physics from the Punjab University just a decade before. And it was peaceful, prosperous. None of what was happening in the 80s was happening in our times. In a decade, things had changed. And then on the 2nd of December, 1984, a pesticide plant leaked in the city of Bhopal and killed thousands. And that's what literally shook me up and said, why are we practicing an agriculture that's so violent, that has to kill people? And the same chemicals that kill people in Bhopal, kill people in the concentration camps, are driving our species to extinction. Every chemical in agriculture is an extinction. Chemical warfare. It's a chemical warfare for extinction. So we shouldn't be surprised if 150 species disappear a day, 200 disappear a day, and 1 million in the next few years if we don't stop. But the same chemicals are also contributing to the greenhouse gases and pollution. Synthetic fertilizers create nitrous oxide, a greenhouse gas 300 times more damaging. So it's totally possible to say, I will not declare war on Mother Earth. Mm-hmm. Withdraw the chemical fertilizers, withdraw the pesticides, stop it. And as the Brahma Kumaris experience shows, and as Navdanya, the movement I started in the 80s, shows, we actually grow more food. We grow more nutritious food. We bring species back. We have 6 times more pollinators on the Navdanya farm in Dehradun. Our water level has come up 70 feet. Our soil organic matter is thriving. We need to irrigate 75% times less. And we have so much diversity thriving that our measures show nutrition per acre increases. So not only is it possible to regenerate the earth, it is necessary to play our role in doing it. Because if we don't, every scientific body of climate change, the IPCC, of the Biodiversity Convention, the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, all of them are saying we have a 10-year window. Now, it's this 10-year window where we can make the shift. And that shift is, we don't have to shift the earth. She's there, she's our mother. Yeah. The shift is in our minds and our paradigms and our values. And that, in fact, paradigm shifts can happen in an instant. So we don't even have to wait 10 years to make a paradigm shift. We have to wait 10 years for the whole world to realize we can have a living planet giving us everything we need. As Gandhi said, the earth has enough for everyone's needs, not for a few people's greed. And my life's experience has shown me this scientifically. We do studies on it. We research on it. We have the figures. Of course, there are systems that say, you got to use pesticides, you got to use fertilizers. But they don't really have a system science to show this. They have tremendous marketing money to repeat it again and again and again. The true science is the science of how does the system work? And is the soil healthier? Are the plants healthier? Are the people healthier? And is the smile more authentic?
When you put this like this, there's so much that comes into the mind now. More and more people in the world are choosing organic food. More people are going vegan. People are making choices in their lives that are healthy for themselves, and it is also healthier for the planet. And slowly we see these paradigm shifts happening. And like you very beautifully said, that all that requires is this instance. And if you want to make that shift, that happens. And yet, I have this one question that I would like to ask Sister Jayanti, because as Dr. Vandana Shiva was saying about this, the passion that she brought in, and she said that this is how change can really happen. We have seen that spirituality has spoken about how things have a cyclic nature. We have heard in Eastern schools of thought where they have said that time is cyclic, nature is cyclic, life and death is also cyclic. So when we see this, many people say that, okay, so there is nothing much that we need to do. The planet will take care of itself naturally because that is the course of time. And this is also a tone that we often hear from climate deniers, where they say that the planet has always taken care of itself and you don't really have to do anything. There is no climate change, literally. So when you see that thing happening, and you also see that there is a spiritual or a philosophical insight where it says that things will fall into place automatically, where does it really leave us to be? Does that mean that we don't need to do anything? Things will happen on its own? Or is that something that we should do? And what does spirituality really say about restoring?
I'm smiling because Sister Vandana is sharing things that really touch the heart. From a scientific, environmentalist perspective, you've explained things so beautifully. But also, these are very much aligned to spiritual concepts. You spoke about what the Brahma Kumaris are doing in terms of organic farming, and not just organic, but we would add another dimension to that, yogic farming, because together with the non-fertilizers and etc., we're also having the people who own the land go out into the farm and have meditation and share those good vibrations with the plants. And, there was a time when they talked about the singing plants and how if you nurture plants with love, they respond to that. And definitely, you shared all the facts about the health of the soil, the health of the plants, and the greater yield, the greater nutrition. All of that happens with yogic farming, of course. And we have the scientific research and evidence that supports all of this. And so there's a lot that needs to be done from our side. It's not just a question it's going to happen by magic or automatically, but there's a relationship between humanity and nature. We are not separate. We are together on this planet. And whatever it is we are doing has had an impact in the last 150 years or so, a negative impact. But can we turn things around and go back to that state where truly we're aligned with our own consciousness and awareness of our spiritual identity? And through that, we can also be aligned with nature and all aspects of nature in terms of all forms of life also. I believe that inner harmony can extend out and reach nature also. And so, yes, I do believe, my sister spoke with absolute passion that, yes, there is hope. Hope can never end. There's always hope that things can turn around. And I also don't like this word restore in a sense, but regeneration is beautiful, creative energy. And so, yes, I do think that the earth can take care of itself, and we are moving although it doesn't seem like it always, but there are energies that are very powerful, energies of goodness and ascending energy that is here present in the world, not just the descending forces and the forces that are negative and bringing us down. And so when we tap into that pure power, the creative energy from the divine, and we allow it, first of all, to bring us back into a state of harmony, so that my inner values and my conscience now work in an aligned way. And this also then means that I'm able to come to the awareness of who I truly am as a spiritual being, experiencing a journey as a human on this earth. But first and foremost, I am a spiritual being. And so in that awareness and the recognition of the values of the inner being, I know that I'm able to come back to a state of self-esteem, self-respect. I respect the people around me, all people, not just of one color or one ethnic community, but all people. But also that respect extends out to all forms of life, so that I'm not going to kill for food, I'm not going to kill for convenience, to be able to have a fur coat to keep me warm, or any of these silly notions that we've been aligned to for a long time now. But all that goes, and in turn comes respect. And also then there's respect for nature itself, the earth, the mother, but also all the other aspects of nature. And so there is something very much that we have to do, and that is shift our mind, shift our consciousness away from the materialism that we've got trapped into, and we come back to a spiritual consciousness of what life really is, to be able to live and let live, to work in harmony with everyone and everything around me.
The word that you just said, harmony, often we see that as much as we live in modern times, people do like spiritual things and they want to make that shift and they really want to do something better. But often we also see that it is the challenging part. When you gave an example that if, for instance, if I had to give up on something, many people think that by becoming an environmentalist or by becoming an eco-friendly person, I have to compromise, I have to let go of things, I might have to stop doing things, is a fear that often comes to people. Vandana ji, this is a question that I have for you. Is this what reality is? Is it what it really means to really restore, means to give up things, to stop doing certain things? When we talk about change, does it really mean about not doing something? Or does it mean about, no, you have to start doing something else as well? Because this is a challenge that we have, because restoration or regeneration, as you both put it, how does it happen? How do we really contribute? Because from where I see, it appears to be quite a challenge.
I think the reason we have treated it as natural to be enslaved into lifestyles and consumption and production patterns that are degrading the earth and eroding her own regenerative potential is because we've been fed consumerism. So beautifully, we were reminded that we are spiritual beings. But if you look at the last 30 years, the main thing we are told is you are buyers of things. You are consumers. You're not citizens for sure. You're not earth citizens. You're not ecological beings. You're not spiritual beings. So in a way, it's an erasure of our being. But the problem is that system that constantly requires people to consume more and more requires another shift. You're wearing a lovely kurta. I'm wearing a handmade sari. My saris last 50 years. I don't have to constantly go and shop for the new one. But now fast fashion is bringing people to the level where they think a a dress gets worn once for a party. Throw away clothing, like they created throwaway food. So for those who worry, I'll have to give up something, all you will have to give up is junk clothing, junk food that is destroying your health and destroying the planet. And all you'll have to give up is a narrow identity. So that means, what do you gain? You gain your fullness as part of the earth, as part of the universe, your spirituality. You gain your fullness with the joy and liberation of simplicity, of enoughness, of limits. They don't become prisons, but liberation forces. And I know everyone can participate in this, because at the Navdanya Earth University, we work with people. Where do you begin? If you want to grow your food, begin with the seed. And the beauty is, the seed seems to look small, but it has the potential to become the plant that will both heal the earth and heal your body. And seed is the embodiment of the cycle. The seed becomes seed, becomes seed, becomes seed. Bija, that which rises from itself again and again and again. It's not a manufacture, it's not an invention. 35 years of my life have been dedicated to removing the brainwashing that the seed is a machine and is invented by companies who can have a patent on it and own it. So our work in the service of the seed has shown no produce more nutrition, more food, the butterflies come back. But if you are not a grower, and everyone can be, just one plant. Why did we have the tulsi? Yeah, one plant. You can't handle the whole world. Take a tulsi, take a basil, take one plant and take care of it. But we're all eaters. We can't avoid that, can we? Yeah. And the place to begin is both, if you can, grow something that nourishes you and nourishes the earth, and you're conscious at every moment how the seed and the soil are related to you, and you have duties to protect them. And on eating, I think this eating for me, when I was doing my PhD in physics, I used to not eat for days. I used to write and solve my equations, And I really thought, this is such a redundant part of life. And my last 36 years have taught me food is the most important. Both it's because it's the currency of life. Food is sacred. When you recognize food as sacred, you recognize that its growing has to be sacred. Its eating has to be sacred. That eating itself is a spiritual act. It's an ecological act of reconnection. So begin by thinking of how you can make a change that will change the planet. Help by eating healthy food. And isn't that beautiful connection? That simply by eating better, giving up junk is not giving up. Giving up poison is not a giving up. It's actually getting a wholesome life.
Wow, you have put it very beautifully. You have turned the whole scenario upside down. It's not really giving up. It's not a compromise anymore. It is something that you are doing for your own betterment. There is something for your own well-being that you are doing, and that really pays you back. So it's not really something that you should think twice about. And this gives so much of hope that so many of us that we see in the world today might be facing a challenge, but they can all make that choice. That change can happen. Thank you, Vandana ji. I'll take the next question to Sister Jayanti. I would like to read this out because this is something that comes from a recent survey. And in a recent survey in the UK, it was found that 36% of people didn't have an opinion or didn't want to choose any change in their lifestyles. And so much more that in recent public discussions and various fora, we have seen whether it is pandemic or whether it is climate change or any challenge that we face today in the world. One of the greatest challenges that we have faced for all of these challenges is human behavior, how human beings respond to these challenges. And especially in the pandemic, many people said that if human behavior could be changed and if people would follow just the instructions that the governments are giving or the safety protocols that the health authorities were asking them to stick to, then it would be much more easier to deal with the challenges that we had. So when we see that this is where we stand, how do we really inspire people to change? How does that change really happen? Because you've been working in the field of spirituality for all of your life, and now you have seen many people change themselves. People started working on themselves, and you've inspired people to change. So if I would want to ask this question, what do you think is the most effective way to create an incentive for lifestyle changes to happen in a large scale, on a mass scale? What is it that really makes people change?
I agree with my dear sister Vandana, because if you show people that there's something more that they're gaining and they're not losing anything, but rather it's a gain and it's a betterment, then that's a very powerful motivation to change. And I would say that, yes, definitely, what's happening is that through transformation, A, they're gaining freedom, but B, they're gaining peace, C, they're gaining happiness, all the things that people actually want in their lives, but they're going the wrong way about it. And this would be the right way to go. When we start changing for the better, then we are actually attaining all the things that we've always longed for in our life. And so it's a real question of education, because we've been educated and brainwashed, as you put it so clearly, by the advertisers that going the wrong way is the right way. But no, it's not true. There's a different way, a different approach. And when we can raise awareness and consciousness and educate people in a different direction, then they're going to be able to see what is the benefit. They're not losing, but they're gaining a huge amount more. But also, I think, apart from education and awareness raising, you need the right company. Now, what is my choice of company? Is it going to be people who are going to pull me in the direction of junk food? Or is it going to be people who understand and know what is the better way to live and are going to help me, support me in my journey towards better food, better nourishment, better world, better planet? And so I think that you have to make your choices. Which direction do I want to go in? And education, awareness raising is a very big factor in making people understand. And it's not so difficult to make people change. I'll give you one little example. I remember traveling on flights, and although you were in a non-smoking area, all the smokers' smoke used to reach you anyway. So it was absolutely awful. And then the government in many countries, including Britain, decided that they would pass a law of non-smoking in public places or public travel areas. And overnight, there was a change. And nobody complained because they could feel that things were better. But the companies that were gaining from the sale of cigarettes, of course, didn't want that to happen. And so they were obstructing that. But when that money obstruction was removed and the governments thought more about health than about that, then people accepted it. People changed. And so I've seen dramatic changes happen. And so I think that this shift of awareness, together we can tell people this program is going to educate people. They're going to hear Sister Vandana's passionate plea for transformation. And I think it's going to inspire change.
Wow. So this transformation that really inspires change should reach out to everyone who's involved. When I'm listening to both of you, I think there is so much that we have in terms of hope, in terms of things to do, in terms of things to start doing. And I believe there are some of our young friends who would come in and they would also want to ask a few questions to you. But before we move on to that segment, you both have known each other for so long. Both of your works have brought you to similar platforms where you have shared platforms, where you have interacted with each other. You have educated and enlightened people about the fields that you work for. You both work for the betterment of this world. And since you have known each other, you might think about this as an opportunity for if you would want to ask question to each other, let's say if there is one question that Vandanaji would want to ask Sister Jayanti, what would that be?
Well, the question I'd ask Sister Jayanti is, how do we work together in the next few years to overcome these illusions as well as artificial divides of the material and spiritual, the body and the mind? Because in an interconnected world where the spiritual energy and the ecological energy is what's keeping it all going, it's not true that these divisions can work, but this awareness that needs to be brought. I would like to ask Sister Jayanti, we've been on the same platforms, but I think there's a new, very, very urgent need, not in a compulsive way, but in an inspirational way of bringing spiritual values to the ecology movement. How do we make the ecology movement a spiritual movement for the young, particularly for the young?
I think this sort of collaboration in which we dialogue together and we can see that we are not poles apart, but in fact our ideas are very, very aligned together, moving to the same goal, a betterment of humanity and a better world. I think this sort of dialogue and collaboration is what can help others see that we aren't separate. We know that we are not separate. We know that we need each other and we can work together. But I think the world needs to see this and recognize this also. So I think our dialogue and collaboration can make them aware of this and help them to understand that it's not two separate things, but it is one thing moving in the same direction.
Very beautifully said, Didi. And I think now I would give this opportunity to you too, so that if you would want to ask something to Vandanaji, what would that be?
I've seen you for decades now, and I've seen so many setbacks come in the field of the environment and the things that you're so deeply passionate about. So what is it that continues to motivate you and allow that passion to be so powerful from the first time I saw you till today? I see that you've been able to keep that flame burning alive very, very powerfully. So what is the inner thing that you're doing to keep that motivation so powerful?
So first is I very consciously act from a place of humility, not from a place of ego. I've seen a lot of very passionate activists in the environment movement burn out. And they say, how do we not burn out? I said, first put your ego aside. We are not in a race. We are not in a competition. We are not doing anything outside what it is our duty to do. A, following our conscience. B, as you have said so beautifully again and again in this discussion, cultivating your consciousness to be aligned with how the universe works anyway. And that brings you humility, because you realize you are not Atlas carrying the world on your shoulder. You are part of the web of life, nurturing your strand with care, compassion, and when required, courage. But when courage comes from compassion, it has more energy. And, I've done quantum theory and I know this. The mechanical systems dissipate. They have entropy, They go from organized energy to dissipative energy. Living systems, spiritual systems are constantly evolving to higher levels. They have a negative entropy and a positive energy. So my physics teaches me how you can live aligned with the forces of life, to not be dissipated, not get exhausted. Do your duty with joy and not as a burden.
Great. Agree.
Thank you so much for those lovely questions, and the answers were equally inspirational. I think there is so much that when we sit together, when we come together, there is so much that we have in common. And as you both rightly pointed out, when we work together, when we collaborate, that is when we can look at the bigger picture and we can do greater things. As we speak about collaboration, there are so many of our young friends working in the field of environment, young leaders, who would like to ask questions on this occasion. And they come from different corners of the world, because the whole of this planet is our home, and so we are all connected to each other. So the members of our own family from different corners, different nationalities have come in today, and they have put in questions for you. So I would take the first question from one of our young leaders, Mohammed Naif from Yemen. So his question, please.
My question is, in the shadow of a pandemic, from your perspective, how can we as a youth leader move forward for climate change and raise our voice to the world? Thank you.
My greetings to Yemen. I had a student from Yemen who said, you must come to our country. It's so beautiful. Our farming is so beautiful. And then the war started. So first of all, greetings of peace to your lovely country. We have been talking throughout this conversation how everything is connected, nothing is separate. The pandemic has been created by the same causes that is leading to climate change. A model of economy of no respect for limits, constantly having to invade ecosystems. Why are the forests disappearing? Leading to climate change, 20% of the greenhouse gas emissions come from agribusiness invasion into forests. But that same invasion leads to new epidemics, the Ebola, the HIV, the Zika, the SARS, the Corona. And if we don't stop that invasion, we won't be able to prevent future pandemics, but we will also not be able to prevent the 50% greenhouse gases that come from a non-sustainable model of agriculture based on commodities, fossil fuels, chemicals, and long-distance trade. So the first thing all young climate activists could do is start talking about this interconnection. And second, showing the connections between climate change and what we eat. And through that, create a whole new opening that even in times of pandemic, in fact, because of the pandemic, where eating healthy for your immunity is even more important, that the solutions to the disease pandemic are the same solutions to climate change. And yes, we are having to do this on Zoom, but you all are very creative. The young people are so creative. We have to face the same root causes. And our work is that one interconnected earth. And I always say the most important climate action is earth care.
Thank you so much. That is such a beautiful way to look into our world. And I think young people, as you said, rightly put, creative, they could put in their energies to regenerate, to do creative things and look for creative solutions. We move on to the next question, and this question comes from Azadeh, and her question, please.
I have two questions. The first is, you are the bridge between the South and the North, East and the West, and have lived in many countries around the world. The planet Earth does not make a gap between Northern and Southern Hemisphere, but why is there a big divide between the East and the West in terms of international cooperation, willingness to recognize each other's interests, and compromise for a certain outcome? The second question is, what is your message to the younger generation, especially women, that can narrow the gap towards a better united world? Thank you very much.
A very powerful question, because it really is positioning what's going on in the world today. But also I think the youth are the answer, the solution, in the sense that when I meet with young people, and I have the good fortune of meeting young people regularly all the time, and what I find in them is that there isn't that nationalism that exists in some older generations, because they've been born into a world without borders, where they can connect seamlessly with friends across the earth in different countries, different time zones. So I do see the future as very much something that the youth can bring about change in and change for, to be able to create that oneness again. And of course, what's happened over the last few hundred years is that colonialism came in, and this whole idea of taking over land and people, not just land, but people. And so I see that as being the root cause of the huge divide that still exists today, that there isn't that consciousness of oneness and we, but rather there's the subject of me and you. And when I am in charge, you have to follow. And whether it's actual colonialism through war and armed forces, or whether it's through advertising and consumerism and globalization, that same pattern of behavior continues. And so I do hope that there can be a greater and greater awareness of spirituality, in which we come to the awareness of seeing everyone as a human being, or even just as that being of light, souls that we all are. And so when we are ready to let go of the ego of this physical consciousness, because that's where the ego resides, in the physical identity, when I come back to my spiritual identity, then I'm able to see that oneness, that one family, and we're able to work together for the betterment of the whole of humanity. And, there's a very simple analogy. Here's a boat. You're sitting in this part and I'm sitting in this part, but it's the same boat. And if the water starts coming into one part of the boat, it's not going to stay in one part of the boat. It's the whole boat that's going to sink. And so when I become aware that it's one earth, one family, then in that awareness of togetherness, then we'll work together to do something for the betterment of all. So spiritual consciousness is very much needed at this moment.
Azadeh, I think that answers your question. I think it's a very beautiful message that we're all interconnected and we are all part of the same world, same family, and that would really bridge that gap. It would act as a bridge that would close this gap and the divide. The next question comes from our friend Ariana from New York. So let's listen to her question.
My question is, what advice do you have for young people who are fighting the good fight for climate justice amidst our very colonized and archaic systems and feeling just a tad bit of powerlessness?
I never give advice. I share my experiences and whatever knowledge my 50 years of research and action and ecology have given me. So the first aspect of the whole climate issue is we have to become aware of the cycles of nature, the cycles of life, and that climate change is a disruption of the cycles. The reason the Earth was named Gaia by James Lovelock is when you realize, oh my gosh, she manages her own climate. She is self-regulating, and Gaia is a living organism. That power and potential comes from her cycles of nutrition, carbon, nitrogen. Those have been disrupted. 600 million years of fossilized fuel underground, burnt away. That began with colonialism and continues. The second very important part that your generation has to do is be very, very alert to false solutions that are new colonialisms. I suggest to you all to both read my book, Soil Not Oil, but I'm going to put out for Earth Day a new report on Earth democracy, how the rights of the earth and the duties of people are interconnected. And this basically means that we have to see climate change as a disruption of planetary boundaries and a violation of limits. And we have to see climate solutions as a healing, not new colonizations. I have written a piece recently saying, how can you say half for nature when everything we have, the breath we have, the water we drink, the food we have, all of it comes from nature. So my message for this Earth Day is, it's not half for nature, it's all for nature, all from nature, for the well-being of all. That's the message of one humanity on one planet. And in this, as I said earlier, simple acts of food, farming, eating can play a big role. And sadly, this is also where the false solutions are being introduced. So look out at the website of navdanya.org. We have a new report called Earth Rising, Women Rising. My new report on climate change will be out. And I think the most important reason we don't have to feel powerless is we are part of a powerful universe where power, what is Shakti? The power to act. Creation is power. Creation is energy. And that's why I think if there's one thing that this conversation should leave us with, is our powerlessness comes from being separated from that power. Our awakening to our inner power and our interconnected power comes from aligning with that power. And that's both a scientific awareness, it's a spiritual awareness, it's an ecological awareness, it's a cultural duty, and everything merges in that alignment. So oneness is the answer to powerlessness.
Wow, very beautifully put. I mean, just to not see yourself as powerless, but to see that you are also the source, you're also there, you are radiating that energy and you're part of this world. There is so much of creation happening, and there you see that oneness happening. And when there is that oneness, that is where the true source of power lies. Thank you so much, Vandana ji, for that answer. Our next question comes from all the way from Colombia. Maria wants to ask a question to Sister Jayanti. This is the question for you.
What is the best method to start giving to nature and stop taking from it?
Thank you, Maria, for that question. I've been taking the whole of my life. Can I now at least simplify? Sister Vandana put it very beautifully. Simplicity is beauty, and it's absolutely true. The more simple you are, the more beautiful you are. And the same applies to all the things I surround myself with. Can I have simplicity in my home and allow that elegance and beauty to shine through? So firstly, let me reduce my footprint so that I'm taking less, only just as much as I need, not anything more. But also, what is it that I can give back to nature? My love, my care, my respect, and of course the way I treat nature is going to reflect all of this. But there's another very specific thing that we can do. In silence, just coming to the awareness of the inner being and connecting with the divine, I can allow that divine force to share love and light and compassion and care with nature, peace and truth, so that then nature can be helped in that process of regeneration and coming back to its original pure state. So I think all of us can spend a few minutes every day being able to do that, and that'll be what I do for nature at this moment, but also reduce my footprint.
Wow, that is something that we all can start working with, because we are not here to take something from the planet. Of course, the nature provides for each one of us, but at the same time, if there is something that we can really give back, that is our good vibrations of reducing our footprint, looking at our consumption patterns, probably rethink, and then we can bring about a change. Thank you so much, Sister Jayanti, for that answer. And Maria Paula, thank you so much for that question. As we come close to the end of this program, we have saved the fun part for you at the end. And I believe there is so much that many people think for climate change and for the planet and for the earth. Many of us come with a very heavy feeling that, oh, this is going to be a very serious topic, but it doesn't have to be. And all through our conversations with Dr. Vandana, Shiva and Sister Jayanti, we have seen how beautifully it complemented to a simple and easy way of living where we enjoy being here on this place, on this planet. And we would now want to ask few questions that we think in a very rapid fashion, so that we get quick answers for the questions that we think might have a quicker changing abilities that would bestow this ability to us, so that, okay, we'll do this starting tomorrow. So I would put forth these questions to Vandana ji first. So Vandana ji, here are the rapid questions for you. You may choose to answer in one word or a sentence, but not more than that. But if you think that for doing justice to the question, if you'd want to answer a little more, the choice is always open to you. So the first question that I would want to put forth is, what is the one thing that can positively impact climate change?
What we eat and how it is grown.
Wow. Simple and very powerful. Thank you. The second question is, what will be the one thing that you would want the world to stop doing?
Stop eating chemicals and junk food.
Again, eating. So let's go to the third one. The third one is, what is the one thing that you see today in the world that gives you hope?
Young people wanting to protect Mother Earth.
Wow, that is very inspirational, and I think that gives a great boost to the young leaders who are working for the planet. The next question is, what is the one opportunity that you see in this climate crisis?
Awareness that we are part of the Earth. The climate crisis is not happening to something far away. It's happening to Mother Earth and is impacting our lives.
Okay, so the last question is, what is the one change that I can make to make the world a better place?
I'll have to come back to the very, very, very simple act of eating.
I think all of your answers, most of it rather, come from eating, and you have really brought us to that point about what do we really think that what we are doing today. Most of us understand that all of livelihoods depend.
Say that, eating is not a material act. Eating is a spiritual and ecological act of connection. Food is the currency that moves from the plants to our bodies, to our gut microbiome. We are 100 trillion fellow beings. We are interbeings. And that's why eating is not about us taking stuff and putting it in. Eating is about our interconnectedness with the earth.
Thank you so much, Vandana ji. Thank you for answering those questions. And I believe now we consciously understand the process of eating, not as just as a process of consuming something, but a more wholesome process. Now I'd like to move to Sister Jayanti, and I would have the same questions for her as well. So Sister Jayanti, the first question would be, what would be the one thing that can positively impact climate change?
Vegan diet.
Thank you, Didi. Very simply put, and that gives a solution. There is so much of scientific evidence for it. Moving on to the second question, what will be the one thing that you would want the world to stop doing?
Using fossil fuels.
Very beautiful. There is so much happening now. Many people are moving towards cleaner energy. The third question is, what is the one thing that you see today in the world that gives you hope?
The same answer. Young people who are so interested in caring about the environment and nature.
Thank you so much. I think that provides so much boost to the inspiration that we have had today from both of you. The next question is, what is the one opportunity that you see in this climate crisis?
Pain sometimes brings an awakening. And so maybe seeing the climate crisis and the impact it's having, the floods, the earthquakes, etc., maybe that pain is a movement towards an awakening.
Thank you. That was very deep, and I believe many of our friends would have to rethink about what you just said, because many people think that pain really brings us to a point to change. What is the one change that I can make to make this world a better place?
Can I stop being a caterpillar, consuming, and be a butterfly that can fly?
Wow, very beautifully said. Just on the closing note of this rapid fire, both answers have come out very beautifully. Just one last question to both of you. I believe sometimes we all look for inspiration, we look for hope, we look for motivation, we look for someone to support us, guide us, and many times we look for different places. And we have often found that in books or in wisdom that older generation has given us, or sometimes ancient texts, sometimes whatnot, simple things in our life that we have seen, read, heard, often keep us afloat, keep us alight and motivated. So Sister Jayanti, if there is a quote by anyone or a quotation or a statement or something that you've heard, read, or something that somebody has said to you that that keeps you motivated, that makes you remain hopeful and afloat, what would that be?
Perhaps it's something to do with love, and it's come from the teachings that we study at the Brahma Kumaris in Amurli. And it goes something like, the power of love is able to conquer all. And so being able to love nature, my home, Mother Earth, maybe that's the way forward.
Oh, thank you so much, Didi. Dr. Vandana, I would put forth the same question to you. And I believe you would have a storehouse of quotes and statements that you can make, that you've heard, that you have read. But what would be one thing that you would like to share with us that really keeps you up in spirits all the time?
The Isha Upanishad, from which Gandhi distilled the earth has enough for everyone's needs, but not for a few people's greed, which also inspired Tagore and has inspired again and again the regeneration of our civilizational values, that says this universe is permeated by the divine and is for the benefit and good for all beings. Enjoy your share without greed and do not take other people's share. And in this one Veda is all of the ecological learning of all times.
Thank you so much. That was indeed very inspiring and very deep, asking us to look at our lives, rethink what we are doing and how we should really live in the world. Thank you so much to both of you. And I believe this conversation on Earth Day would not have happened on any other day, because this coming together on this moment marks how much we all care for our planet, how much we all care for our own mother, like Vandana ji was putting it across. And Sister Jayanti said that what responsibilities that we have, what little that we can do, is not something that we are giving up on or not compromising on, but this is something that we can offer it back as what we have taken from the planet. And like she said, it is the power of love. If we could come to love the planet, to the beings of this planet, to love each other, then we have a better world in front of us. And there is so much more that we have gathered here in this conversation. There are so much for everyone to take away from this conversation, I believe. And from all of our viewers and all of our friends, and especially the youngsters who have put in so much of energy and who have asked questions, who have thought about questions, and who are enjoying this conversation as well. I would like to thank both of you for joining us today and sharing that wisdom with us. Thank you, Dr. Vandana, and thank you, Sister Jayanti.
And a happy Earth Day all.
Thank you. Before we leave, friends, what Sister Jayanti was sharing was a very beautiful thought, that even if you cannot do anything, look at your footprints, look at what you are doing, and then probably spend some time of giving back to the nature, giving back to this planet, giving back to this earth, a moment of healing, a moment of gratitude, a moment of that meditation that brings us to our internal awareness of who we are and what we are doing, and probably what more can we do for the bettering of this place that we call our home, our earth. Sister Jayanti, may I request you to lead us to a meditative exercise where we can all radiate our love and our gratitude to the planet.
Thank you for the opportunity. Just sitting quietly, comfortably, I'll share a few thoughts and invite you to follow these ideas. going within and coming to the awareness of the light that I am, the inner being, the light shining in the center of the forehead, connecting with myself. There is peace, and in this awareness I connect with the divine. And as I do so, the source of light, of love, of purity, of joy, showers all these qualities on each and every one of us. And these qualities reach out beyond the human family to the bigger family, all forms of life. And these qualities reach out to the entire web of life, nature itself, the purity, the peace, the love, truth, and joy. Permeate throughout the human family, all other species, and nature. And the restorative energy, the regenerative energy is at work. And harmony is created once more. I hold this vision and I keep connecting with this again and again. Om Shanti. Thank you.
It is one world, one earth, one mother, one family. It is one creator, and the creation is not our property to rob, abuse, or violate. We need to shift the consciousness of owning something. We have the responsibility to take care as trustees and share with others as well. Scientific bodies of climate change say we have a 10-year window left to act. A paradigm shift in our mindset can happen in an instant. We don't need 10 years. Spiritual energy and the ecological energy are interconnected. Both are aligned together and moving to the same goal of a beautiful world. We tap into the creative energy from the divine and come to our awareness as spiritual beings, experiencing the journey as a human on this earth. This awareness lets us respect the self and all others. Spend a few minutes every day to sit in silence, connect with the divine, and allow the divine force to share love, light, compassion, and care with nature, so that nature can be helped in the process of regeneration and come back to its original pure state. We need to shift our consciousness away from the materialism. When we come back to a spiritual consciousness of what life really is, we will be able to live and let live and work in harmony with everything around us. If we can grow something that nourishes us and nourishes the soil, we become conscious of how seed and soil are interrelated to us and of our duty to protect them. Food and its eating are sacred acts. When we give up junk food,
Simply by eating better, we create a wholesome life. Everything we have comes from nature. The simpler we are, the more beautiful we become. Let's reduce our footprint so that we take less, only just as much we need, not anything more. Give back love, care, and respect to nature.